And this is what I came up with. AB. So always be communicating, always be doing, always be educating, always be feeling, always be guiding, always be hiring, always be iterating, always be joking, always be kind, and always be learning. And I truly believe that if you practice the ABCs of your entrepreneurial journey, you will go a good way to avoid the dummy tax and a great distance to avoid the tax. And we are back with another episode of the Julius Files. I am your host, Jason Julius, and welcome to the Water Cooler for Small Business, where we talk about everything small business, because I am involved in many small businesses, and as I'm dealing with issues myself, as I'm learning and growing, I am trying to talk about issues, problems that I've come across in my businesses, and how I have waded my way through the mud. It's been a journey in the last 18 years, and even when I think that I've actually got it, I'm forever grateful for the lessons that I continue to learn. We're going to call this podcast Death by Tax, and I am not referring to the mob, which we all, our glorified powers that be. I'm not talking about those kind of taxes. I am talking about two very specific taxes that I am most guilty of paying in my entrepreneurial journey. Even as recently as last year, we were talking about the dummy tax and the asshole tax. And I mean, I want to get right into it, because like, if there is a spectrum of the dummy tax to the asshole tax, obviously you want to find someplace in the middle, and along many lines, I find myself taking someplace in the middle itself. But I think that we're all guilty of it. But the point is, when you look at it and you look at the logic behind it, or even the feelings of it, there's no point paying the dummy tax. And I mean, when it comes to the asshole tax, I'm like, don't be a dick. Again, I am saying this because I can fully admit I have been guilty of being on both ends of this spectrum. It has been very painful lessons learned. It has been part of the journey, but paying either one of these taxes will inevitably slow that journey down when it comes to going from starting to actually getting to what you feel is some level of success. The dummy tax is like, I know that we can all remember being in our 20s and looking at our elders and very much saying, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, things have changed. I've got this. And I think that everybody is generally guilty of that in their 20s. The problem is when you get into your 30s and 40s and 50s and you're still paying that dummy tax. When you get to the other end of the spectrum, where you're talking about the asshole tax, it is you just have to accept, in a lot of ways, you're on this journey alone. Nobody is going to know the full extent of what you're going through as you're actually on your entrepreneurial journey. Some of that being of your own fault. Some of that being that, nobody cares. I'm just being realistic that when it comes to accountability, when you decide that you're going to go into entrepreneurship, you have to own that you made your bed and you have to lie in it. And when you inevitably encounter all of the problems that you're going to encounter in your entrepreneurial journey and developing your business, nobody cares about your problems. Like, everybody in general in the world, by and large, are very self-centered, and they do not care about what problems you are going through. And the reason that I'm saying that is because those problems that you're going through are what lead you down that path of being a dick or paying the asshole tax. And it's very important that you realize that you're being your own worst enemy and you are, in fact, getting in your own way. So that one of the things that I guess I have inside of my store is the ABCs, but mine is ABC, ABS, AB. Yeah, what's that third one? L. No, it's not L. T, training. Always be cleaning, always be smiling, always be training. But when I started thinking about that analogy, I started thinking about the ABCs of the dummy tax and the ABCs of the asshole tax. And this is what I came up with. AB. So always be communicating, always be doing, always be educating, always be feeling, always be guiding, always be hiring, always be iterating, always be joking, always be kind, and always be learning. And I truly believe that if you practice the ABCs of your entrepreneurial journey, you will go a good way to avoid the dummy tax and a great distance to avoid the asshole tax. And again, all of those things end up coming around communication. But the bigger thing is that, like, when it comes to the dummy tax, you do not have to make all of the mistakes yourself. It is okay to learn from other people's mistakes. You will get further faster down the road if you actually seek guidance from other people's wisdom. And if they have been there and done that, you should be listening very closely to the trials and tribulations that they went through, because they're offering you lessons that will inevitably help you avoid pain if you are wise enough to be able to learn from somebody else's wisdom. The dummy tax is, and again, I want to own my proverbial shit. After 17 years in business, I don't know how many times that I've heard hire slow and fire fast. And I made the cardinal mistake last year by hiring fast and firing slow. It hurt my reputation. It hurt my respect. It hurt my bank account. It hurt my team. And I can look back and reflect on that. And literally, as like, I'm in my 18th year in business, in entrepreneurship, and I literally paid a massive dummy tax last year. So my point is, it can happen at any time. I don't have regrets, but I do have reflection and looking back on what I did, the actions that I took in 2022. I paid a lot of dummy tax in 2022. And I'm saying this because inevitably you will, if you do not continue to learn and grow and feed your brain and literally always be learning. I have said this many times. Too many people think that once they get through high school or once they get through college, that they have done all the reading that they're going to do, that they have done all of the learning that they're going to do, and that the learning is done and now it is just time to apply. And while I'm not saying that you cannot actually get through life that way, I'm saying you will not get through entrepreneurship that way. You will pay such a dummy tax with that mentality that your business will die on the vine. Like the technology today is just evolving too fast for you to not always be on the learning curve, for you to always be searching out new information, always be reading books, always be searching out guidance and mentorship. But more specifically, so, when it's all said and done, between my brands, I employ somewhere 70 to 80 people. I have found that over time, I actually started growing when I got out of my way and I started firing myself and replacing myself with specialists in each individual piece of the business. What I'm getting at is that in order for you to scale, you have to always be developing systems and processes, and you have to always be firing yourself and putting a specialist in your place. So when you are looking at your systems and your processes, you are going to pay the dummy tax and the asshole tax If you do not go back to those specialists and actually talk to them about their job, because those specialists are developing and refining best practices inside of that piece of your organization, and it's listening to the people that are actually doing the work every day, where you're going to gain very valuable information and insight into how your business is evolving. They're the ones that are actually interacting with your customers, with your equipment, with your vendors, with other employees. And the same way that generations change, because I can fully admit that if I go backwards in my 18-year journey, the way that I communicated and got results out of my employees 18 years ago was different than today. They responded different. The technology was different. How you got through to them was different. You could talk on a different level 18 years ago than you have to talk today, because this group today has very much grown up with their face in phones and in iPads. They learn different, they respond different, they act different. And my point is, you always have to be learning in order to communicate with them, to be able to extract the information and the insight that they actually have. And again, it is another way of always be learning and collecting information to apply. And it is on that dummy and asshole tax spectrum when you start thinking that you know everything, and that the people that you have brought in to help you run your business are not able to offer valuable insight into how to continue to learn, develop, grow, and scale. Obviously, when it comes to the doing of the always be doing, is that people are always looking at you. You are the leader. If they don't actually see that you are doing well, how are they going to participate and actually give you the feedback that you're looking for? Always be educating. I am just a big believer that if your people see that you are always seeking information and you are always seeking to learn, and then in turn educating, again, you are creating communication, you are creating reciprocation and rapport. You are going out of your way to actually avoid that dummy and asshole tax. Then we get into always be feeling. Why am I saying that? Because I am a big believer that, like, I am not the most intelligent person in the world, but I have a lot of emotional intelligence. And that just comes down to feeling your way through the situation, through the people that you're actually dealing with. And I mean, for lack of better words, playing the person, because it's not always the situation. It's not always the facts that are in front of you. It is the individuals involved. It is the feelings involved. And everybody leads with feelings, and it's going out of your way to understand those feelings, potentially having empathy for those feelings, but then guiding them to a path of actually getting to logic so that you're making good business decisions in general. We go back to always be guiding. I mean, always be coaching, always be training. Your interaction with your team and the amount of input that you get from them is going to go a long way to determining your success. As far as if they see that you're actually willing to interact with them, then you're not being perceived as the asshole. If you are showing that you actually value their insight, like, you can learn something from everybody. Like, I have come across some shady individuals in the world, and it still didn't stop me from learning something from them. I have come across some dumb individuals in the world. Still didn't stop me from learning from them. And I have been very blessed to come across some fellow people with deep levels of emotional intelligence and common sense and communication with them. Like, either one of us might be coming to the table with an idea, and neither idea being the idea to move forward, but just through actually having communication and conversation with them, it leads to the idea that actually ends up carrying you forward. Always be hiring. Okay, I am a big believer that I'm never hiring. I'm always accepting applications. But the bigger point is, I'm always looking to hire somebody that can actually bring something to the table to move the overall operation down the road. Always be iterating. I am a big tester. In competition, you always have somebody else that thinks that they figured out the next greatest thing. So if you are not always testing to find the next greatest thing, then you're not moving your ball forward. And if you're not moving your ball forward, somebody else is just going to come take your lunch. Always be joking. I am a big believer in applying a little bit of levity. Generally, in every business that I own, you find, or I have found that, I mean, I want to say that there are good days and there are bad days, but you've got certain days when the pressure is really on, or certain times of day when the pressure is really on. And when you get into the monotony of the work itself, sometimes stepping through and adding a little bit of levity, getting them to joke, getting them to put a smile on their face can go a long way towards breaking up that actual tension. Always be kind. Okay, I have seen that you can always get your point across with being kind. Now, I am not going to deny that, because I've had to say it many times. Like, if I ask you to do something, I am being kind. If I ask you to do something a second time, I'm not being so kind. If I get to the point of telling you to do something on the third time, I am one hair away from proverbially or literally slamming my fist on the table to actually get your attention. And more often than not, I'm not going to say good things come from it, but I always end up coming back to, I tried to be very kind. I tried a second time. I told you what I needed a third time, and now you have brought me to a fourth time. And if you're actually having to deal with an individual like that, maybe that individual is not the best individual for your operation itself. What I'm getting at is that you should be leading with always being kind, always being open to other people, giving you input, because the more pleasurable the interaction is, the better input that you're actually going to get. And I mean, we're circling back around, but always be learning. I just cannot stress enough that in my 18 years, every time that I have pointedly made it that I woke up every day with the intent of learning something new every day and applying it, my mental and physical health increased, and my ball moved forward. That's in business. Things are just change. The winds change on a whim, and technology evolves to the point that you always have to be learning. Okay, when I look at all of this, communicating, doing, educating, feeling, guiding, hiring, iterating, joking, being kind, and learning, if you think about what all of that is, it's cultural. And if you truly want to have a great culture in your organization, which is inevitably how you herd cats and how you steer a ship and keep everybody moving in the right direction and avoid the dummy tax and avoid the asshole tax, this is how you scale. If you want to scale a business, you have pointedly, you have to institute a culture. You have to be looking at what reputation do you want and how are you actually going to implement it into your organization. And you very pointedly have to be thinking of these things in virtually every interaction that you have with your team. I am highly encouraging everybody to do some very deep thought, because the dummy and the asshole tax are both very, very expensive taxes, both in your reputation and your bank account. And that is death by tax. I am telling you, 9 out of 10 fail in the first year. And of the one that makes it, 9 out of 10 fail in the first 10 years. That means 99 out of 100 fail in the first 10 years. And generally speaking, when you look at all of the different ways that you can fail, a good clip of them are in that spectrum of the dummy tax and the asshole tax. There is no need in paying those taxes. Entrepreneurship is such a broad spectrum of what you have to learn to do and continue to learn to do in order to grow your business, that you don't need to be wasting time getting in your own way and being your own worst enemy. And you are truly being your own worst enemy if you're paying the dummy tax. And I'm just here to tell you, in order to scale a business, you have to scale with people. And if you want to lead with being an asshole, if you want to be a dick, well, you're going to have a hard time as a leader, because the point of being a leader is that other people are willing to follow you. And unless you can afford, unless your business is that outlier that just makes so much god-awful money that you can afford to pay people absolutely unrealistic amounts of money, nobody is going to be willing to follow your lead if you're leading with being an asshole. Okay, that is my podcast for today. I do want to say that if this resonates with you, please share the show. If you know somebody that needs to hear this, please share the show. I think a lot of these things comes down to principles and perspective that can easily be applied to life. But when I look at entrepreneurship, it's the hardest thing that I've ever done. It is the hardest thing that I continue to do every day. And there are so many stumbling blocks that if you look back on them, you will find out you put most of them in your own way. And it just doesn't need to be. And I know some of this stuff might come across as common sense, but in this world, it seems common sense seems to be pretty uncommon in this world. And I just don't want to see the failure. I don't want to see the carnage, because like there are things that are going to happen. You're going to be outplayed in a game, and failure is going to potentially happen. And there's lessons to be learned from that. But some of the worst and most painful lessons are the ones that you have to look back at and realize it was nothing more than you getting in your own way. It just wasn't necessary. You want to go out of your way to always be learning, going out of your way to always be communicating, going out of your way to always be attempting to do it right, doing it to the best of your ability. And in a certain way, I'm a big encourager of always trying to center yourself every day before you actually walk out the door, so that you can have the best interactions with all the people that you come across with, and that you can get to the end of the day and at least be able to count the small wins. Because there are days that if you get in your own way, whether you're being a dummy or an asshole, you're going to get home and you're going to be ready to cry, because you weren't able to make anybody happy. You weren't able to look back at the day and find some type of small win. And I'm telling you, you stack too many of those days together, your business ends up closing. Don't pay dumb taxes. Don't get in your own way. If you're going to make the conscious decision to embark on the entrepreneurial journey, then always be willing to learn, always be willing to listen, always be willing to grow, always be willing to take everything that you've learned today and be ready to apply it to tomorrow. All right, that's my podcast. Till next time, you guys have a good night.